that sing from the tallest trees to the human life of you and me, from the desert sands to the place we stand. He's God of all, He's everything. Oh, I'm giving my life to the only one who makes the moon reflect the sun. Every starry night, that was His design. I'm giving my life to the only Son who was and is and yet to come. The praises ring, 'cause He's everything. He's everything. The autumn leaves that will ride the breeze, to the faith it takes to pray and sing, from the painted sky to my plague-filled eye. He's God of all, He's everything. Oh, I'm giving my life to the only one who makes the moon reflect the sun. Starry night, that was His design. I'm giving my life to the only Son who was and is yet to come. Let the praises ring, 'cause He's everything. He's everything. Hallelujah, hallelujah, I believe. I'm giving my life to the only one who makes the moon reflect the sun on that starry night. It changed my life. I'm giving it all to the only Son who gave me hope when I had none. So let the praises ring, let the praises ring, praises ring. I'm giving my life to the only one who makes the moon reflect the sun. A starry night, that was His design. I'm giving my life to the only Son who was and is yet to come. Let the angels sing, He's heavenly. He's heavenly. I'm giving it all to the only Son who gave me hope when I had none. The praises ring, He's everything.
Welcome to the Crosswalk Church service virtually. Glad you took a few moments to sign on and be with us here, and I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. And I just want to assure you how much you are missed and loved by your pastors, Pete and I, but also how much you're missed and loved by your church family. I hear from so many people that they just miss being together and seeing each other. And those of us that are huggers, we miss that too. So hopefully we'll be back together soon. So just want to cover with you some things coming up. So on Sunday, depending when you're watching this, on Sunday, this Sunday, we're going to have a Zoom service at 10 o'clock that you can join in for. And then we're going to have our town hall meeting shortly afterwards. And at the town hall meeting, we're going to be covering everything that we are going to be voting on at the annual business meeting coming up on Sunday, May 17th. So let us know if you want to be part of that. If you have not been getting the Crosswalk connection, if you email me at info@crosswalknapa.org, I will get you an invite so that you can sign on for that and be part of it. So this time we're going to be voting for the same as we do in a lot of our annual business meetings. We will be voting on two officers. We will be voting on our church treasurer, which is Michelle Corley, and our church clerk, which is Linda Smetzer. They have both agreed to continue for another term, which the term for that is 1 year. The next thing we'll be voting on is 3 Board of Stewards. So we'll have a list of people that you get to vote for. You get to choose 3 of those to be serving on the Board of Stewards for the next term, and that's a 3-year term. The next thing we'll be talking about is the proposed annual budget, and Pete will be covering the changes that are on the proposed budget and why the changes were made and those kind of things. So there are a few things in there that he's going to want to cover with you on that. But so it's really important you sign up and be part of this conversation. And then the other thing we're going to be talking about is a slight change to the Constitution. And it has to do with voting and how we vote. And so be sure you come on Sunday and learn about those things. And then also on the ballot will be the opportunity for you to renew your membership. We do this every year, and you just sign up whether or not you agree to continue to be a crosswalker. So again, town hall meeting this Sunday, May 3rd, and then the annual meeting will be Sunday, May 17th. So plan on being part of both of those. So the other thing I want to let you know about is on Sunday mornings, we have what's called Kids Connect, where the kids get together. They have some time that they spend with Soul. So if you have kids, I'd like to encourage you to sign up for that. We send out a Zoom invite as well. So if you have not been getting it in the past and you would like to get it, again, email me at info@crosswalknapa.org and we'll get you an invite and your kids can get connected with Soul on Sunday. And then the other thing I want to remind you is on Wednesday, we do virtually together. So right now we're doing a series called Embracing the Life of Meaning, which is a really good video series. And so you have 2 opportunities to do that, either Wednesdays at 12 o'clock noon or at 7 p.m. in the evening. And at both of these, you can bring your dinner along and enjoy your dinner while you're part of the group, or you can just bring along a beverage and enjoy that as well. So it is 2 opportunities for you get to see other crosswalkers and spend an hour with them talking and talking about the video that you're watching and how it affects you or what you understand that they're saying. And it's been a really good group. So just want to encourage you to come to either one of those or come to both. It's an opportunity for you to do that. And then I would just like to tell you how much we appreciate your support here at Crosswalk. We've been getting quite a few people signing up online to be able to give through Realm, and that's greatly appreciated. And then also through mail, we've been getting quite a few envelopes in the mail. So whichever you're more comfortable with, if you're really into technology and you just want to do it through a text message, that opportunity is available as well. So any one of those 3 ways you can get some financial support into Crosswalk. And I was trying to think of a way to celebrate Crosswalk with you this week because I like to do that. And I just want to celebrate that even though our doors are closed and we're saying the church is closed, we're actually pretty busy around here. We've got the Emergency Volunteer Center out in the lobby. And then they're collecting items. So a while back I told you Pastor Pete had started a thing called Spare a Square. So if you have some extra toilet paper and you want to bring it down and donate it, they're giving it to the food bank, and the food bank is taking it out to the seniors, trying to help them stay at home and stay safe. So they're taking them rolls of toilet paper whenever they take them their Meals on Wheels. So that's an opportunity that you can help someone else. The other thing they're collecting is face coverings. So if you're a seamstress and you're making face coverings, bring those down. They're trying to collect a lot of those through Operation With Love from Home. And then they're getting them out into, right now it's congregant living, where like the South Shelter needed some for all of the people living at their shelters. So they took a load out to them so that they would be better protected. But they're needing a whole lot more of them. So if you're a seamstress and you've already been making them and you have a stockpile and you don't know what to do with them, bring them on down here to Crosswalk. The other thing they're collecting is cleaning items and hand sanitizers for when things do open back up, so people will be able to be better prepared. In a short, I guess in 2 weeks, I'm going to be getting a delivery of 2 pallets of cleaning supplies that are going to be going to preschools so that they can have everything cleaned up when things open up and are ready. And then the other thing they'll be used for is the emergency child care that's being provided for the first responders right now, because many of the preschools obviously have closed down, so they needed childcare for those families. So that's where all these supplies are going. And then a couple weeks after that, I'll be getting 3 more pallets of diapers and wipes. So even though Crosswalk is closed, we're still actively serving our community. We're still getting a lot of things done. So I just want to share that with you and let you know that. But again, to remind you how much you're missed and how much your smiles are missed and how much your hugs are missed and just you're missed in your family here at the Crosswalk. So thank you, and I hope you all stay safe and stay well, and hope to see you sooner than later. God bless.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down fast till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give
like many of you who have had multiple Zoom meetings a day or just get sick and tired of being inside, I've tried to get outside pretty regularly every day to take a walk or 2 or 3, and been hitting my step count, which is always good for my health and sanity and so forth. In the last week, I've noticed some graffiti show up on a bridge that I cross pretty regularly, and on the iron framework, I've seen in chalk and cap letters these words, these phrases: virus hoax, open USA, open schools now, and isolate the sick. Now, when I read these things, I read fear and I read frustration because I really don't think whoever authored these things or gave us this artwork was really wanting us to have a surge or wanted bad things to happen to the elderly or the vulnerable. And yet I'm also certain that it was this fear that caused a reaction in them to be completely insensitive and tone deaf to a very stressful situation for the entire world. Make no mistake, this is no hoax. And the tone deaf insensitivity, I mean, do you really think this person could stare somebody in the face who is struggling with COVID-19, or knows somebody who is, or the families that are grieving the loss of, in the United States, what are we at, 60,000 something dead? Not the best, but it reflects something about where that person's coming from, their frustration, because the losses are real. The loss of the jobs, the loss of security, everything. Then I went to the grocery store last weekend, and it's an errand that I've really avoided as much as possible. In my role as a pastor, I never know where I will be called to go, and sometimes that place where I need to go are with people who are extremely vulnerable. And knowing that we've got a few crosswalkers that are really struggling with some health issues, and you never know who's going to have a struggle next. I've wanted to stay very healthy because I don't want to create more problems by bringing whatever I've been exposed to in with me when I might need to go visit a family. So I've been extremely careful. So I go into the grocery store and I have my mask. Thank you, Danny Newman, for making me a cool Giants mask. And I go in and I was a little bit shocked to see that maybe only 60% of the people walking around the grocery store were wearing a mask. And this is after it's been widely promoted as a good idea for the general health of the population. I was quite surprised. And it was an interesting feeling in me. And by the way, I mean, some of the grocery store workers as well, a couple of them didn't have masks, or near the checkout, where there's like 3-4 workers standing around. One guy wanted to talk, so he pulled down his mask so he could talk and laugh and stuff, and then put it back on. I'm thinking, well, what was the point of that? And I had these weird mixed emotions, and maybe as I'm telling the story, you're having a similar reaction. When I see this, I see, okay, well, it's not a law on the books that people have to wear masks or you're going to be thrown in jail or something, or fined, at least not yet, not in our county. But at the same time, this exercise of somebody's right to not wear a mask was infringing on the health and well-being, potentially, of everybody around them, because we know that wearing face coverings, the ones that you make, at home and stuff, they're not the N95. They're not the ones that we want our doctors and nurses wearing. These are the ones that aren't going to protect us from germs coming in. They are protecting other people from our water droplets going out. And so for the people who are walking around with no face covering on whatsoever, it's almost like, I get their right to their freedom of their life and all that, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, I don't know you. I don't know where you've been. And you may not even know if you're carrying this thing. And yet you're putting me at risk with what you don't even know is going on. And by extension, if I'm called into some vulnerable situation, you're putting those people at risk. And so I had this weird tension in me about that. I wonder how you feel about that. How do you enter in to this equation? It's a guy named Doug Seuss, not like Dr. Seuss, but pronounced the same way. And Doug Seuss has a ranch in Utah, and he went out the back door of his home and onto his backyard space, which stretched out into acres of land, as you can picture in, expansive Utah. And immediately he spotted a grizzly bear. And the grizzly bear spotted him. And in short order, the grizzly bear charged right at Doug Seuss. Grizzly bears are huge. This thing was 1,200 pounds. And Doug knew there was no escaping what was coming. This grizzly bear, within a few feet of Doug Seuss, rose 9 feet above Doug Seuss, and then gave him a legitimate, literal bear hug. Because Doug Seuss is an animal trainer, and he has specialized in grizzly bears. And this particular bear, he has raised since he was a cub. Many of the bears that Doug Seuss has trained have shown up in movies that you're probably familiar with, and he's trained other animals as well. But when you see the enormous size of this bear, you got to wonder, why would anybody venture into this? And how do you do it? How do you tame an apex predator from eating you alive? And that story kind of reminded me of an interesting story out of Jesus' life, where he was on the Sea of Galilee on the shores doing his ministry, teaching people stuff, no doubt healing people and doing all kinds of stuff that clearly indicated that God was with him. And it was a day of success, or days of success. He kind of did most of his life around the Sea of Galilee, that region, and was renowned for his wisdom, his insights into Jewish scriptures, his way of being, the charisma that he carried, the way he lived his life, where he went, what he did, and miracles that he performed. He was remarkable, and he had a following. Well, after this particular day, he looked at the disciples and said, "Let's go to the other side of the lake." And so they hopped in a boat. A lot of the disciples were fishermen, in the inner circle especially. And so they got in a boat, and Jesus was wiped out. I mean, when we're at Crosswalk and doing 2 services a day, I'm there way early. I'm up way early reviewing my stuff. I'm there at the church way early getting things set up. And I'm usually one of the last people to leave the building. And when I get home, I know what a nap feels like, and I'm usually looking forward to it about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Not that I always get one. So I understand. Here Jesus has been going maybe for days, and all day long he's been doing his thing. They get into the boat. It's a sunny day on the lake, and he's like, "Man, I'm just gonna crash out here, guys. Let me know when we land." In fact, this is how the story reads in the Gospel of Mark. Late that day he said to them, "Let's go across to the other side." They took him in the boat as he was. Other boats came along. A huge storm came up. Waves poured into the boat, threatening to sink it. And Jesus was in the stern, head on a pillow, sleeping. They roused him, saying, "Teacher, is it nothing to you that we're going to drown?" Awake now, he told the wind to pipe down and said to the sea, "Quiet, settle down." The wind ran out of breath. The sea became smooth as glass. Jesus reprimanded the disciples. "Why are you such cowards? Don't you have any faith at all?" And they were in absolute awe, staggered. "Who is this anyway?" they asked. "Wind and sea at his beck and call." So it's a very interesting story. It's one of these miracle stories that confounds us a little bit. And so I want to talk about how we approach this, the lens which we use to look at this. Now, our Western mindset, we are very literal oriented, so we tend to look at a story like this and just read it literally and try to understand what's going on as if it were a newspaper reporter giving this to us. And so on a literal level, if you go back to the ancients, what they were thinking about this is, okay, yep, this is one of those proof stories of the power that was flowing through Jesus. Not so much for the Jewish audience in this, because you kind of have a demigod quality here going on in Jesus. And that would have been anathema to the Jewish audience, but to the Gentile audience who was used to Roman and Greek mythology, that actually made a lot of sense to them. So they're seeing this Jesus have the capacity to command weather to stop or to do whatever he wanted to do. So on that literal level, it was kind of a proof story for what was going on in this Jesus. And sometimes that literalness is helpful as long as we don't think about it too much. I mean, it's great to think, wow, this guy really had all this going on, and that's wonderful for that day and that particular context and that time. But when it becomes problematic is when we go through life storms and we cry out to God and beg and plead for God to help. And we use all the fancy prayers we can muster, and we drown anyway. And then we're kind of like asking, well, what was the point of that? That was real helpful to know Jesus could do that once, but what's it doing now? Which leads us into maybe needing to look at this story in a different framework, with a different lens. We don't know exactly what happened that day, but we have the story. And the story is passed down. It was preserved for a reason. And one of the reasons for us, even if we take the literal approach, is to take on a metaphorical approach to it. It certainly wasn't less than this proof test for Jesus' power, but I think it was more than that. And there's a more than literal way of thinking about this text. Because what I see in this is you have the disciples who are supposed to be following in the lead of the master. And the disciples are freaking out. Meanwhile, Jesus is at rest. And it's curious. Toward the end of the story, they have to wake Jesus, and Jesus wakes up, and then he calms the sea. But I wonder, who woke who up? Is it possible that Jesus was so in the zone that he was able to be calm even in the midst of a terrible storm that seemed to threaten the lives of the disciples? At least that's where they thought it was going. I wonder who was really awake. You know, this whole idea of being awake and awakened and living in a woke state. It seems to me that Jesus was awoke. And he helped the disciples see just how asleep they were. They were in terror. He was at rest. Which takes me back to the grizzly story. How did a guy like Doug Seuss, how did he move forward in his life? His story is very interesting. If you want to catch the May-June 2020 issue of Men's Journal, you can read this brief article on him and see some of the pictures that I'm going to show you, which are remarkable. But how does a guy like Doug Seuss get to a place where he decides that he can have a friendly relationship with an apex predator? That's pretty remarkable. Well, one of the things that changed for him was he had a paradigm shift. The lens with which he chose to view the world shifted for him. And it went from a place like most of us probably find ourselves in, where if we see a grizzly bear, which I've seen some from about 100 yards, wild, and, you know, pretty scary stuff when you're seeing them and knowing that they can run very fast and eat you alive and call you dinner. Pretty intimidating stuff. And he moved from a place of fear toward grizzly bears to a place of deep reverence. There's the word. There's a big difference between fear and reverence. Fear sees this thing as a threat, maybe even as an enemy, but reverence respects where they are and creates a relationship around that respect. There's a very big difference here. His eyes were open to the reality of the grizzly bears and the recognition of the incredible beings that they are. And out of that deep reverence, he created relationships with a handful of bears over the years. In a respectful relationship, he realized that they were fellow creatures on this planet who deserved respect and reverence, and brought that into the equation. Because he had that kind of reverent worldview about bears and other wild animals he's trained, he actually gets along, and they respect or revere him back. It's an incredible dynamic. And it makes me think about the way Jesus entered the world, because something happened to Jesus. Now, this is an ongoing debate, and I've talked about this for years now, about how we think different things about the person of Jesus and what created the thing about Jesus that made him Jesus. And we don't know exactly when it happened or if it was developed over time. Some say it was from birth. It's very, very mysterious. But what we do know is something radically shifted when he chose to be baptized by his distant cousin John. And that was a move into his life of ministry. And things changed for him. That's what marks his public ministry. And it's like at that time, it was like something woke within him, at least physically, recognizably for everybody else on the planet. And he went into seclusion to figure out who he was and where he was going to go with his life and what he was going to be about. And when he came out of that experience, that whole season of his life, that 40 days, starting with the baptism and forward, he came with a very different perspective. And you need to understand about Jesus here. This is, sometimes we Superman Jesus, and we make him so invulnerable to life that he really becomes hard to relate to. Lose that image. Jesus knew what it was to struggle. He was under the tyranny of the Roman Empire his whole life. The Roman Empire killed him. So this guy knows what it is to struggle. He knew what it was to be out of work. He knew what it was like to be looked down upon by other people because of his skin tone and his language and where in the country he was from. He was very aware of this stuff. He knew what it was like to be treated poorly because of his lack of education. That may be a surprise to some of you. He knew what it was like to not know where his future was going or how long he was going to live. And he was 30 years old when he started, which made him an upper middle-aged man for his day and age. And something shifted in him where he saw things very differently. And instead of, like many people, living in fear with a vision of scarcity and there's not enough, it's like the whole world opened up to him and he saw everything completely differently. It's like he started to recognize that there's an abundance all around him. Instead of wondering when God is going to come down out of the heavens, it's like all of a sudden he could see God everywhere, in everyone, and in everything. And I think this is related to the Jewish understanding of creation at the outset. I think Jesus was very Jewish, and I think he was deeply in touch with the God that is represented in the Jewish scriptures. And the whole Jewish Bible starts out with what we have in the Christian Bible, the book of Genesis. And the very first creation story that we have shows God being motivated out of love and goodness, creating one thing after another. And after each moment looks at those things and says, that was good. That was real good. He gets to human beings, creates them in God's own image. He says our image, which is cool and mysterious as well. And he looks at that and he looks at humanity and says, that's not just good. That's very good. And so it's this idea of goodness, that there's a good start here. That was really the foundation for how Jewish people saw the world, which was in direct contrast to the other cultures and the way they were understanding cosmology at that time. Now, there's an earlier, more primitive story that comes up in Genesis 2 and 3. That's the one you may be familiar with Adam and Eve and the tempter, and then God coming in. And this one has been kind of misunderstood because of the Christian interpretation of this, which started actually centuries after Jesus. That may be a surprise to you. But this idea of like the fall of Adam and Eve and the entrance of sin into the world, that idea did not even show up as a doctrine for centuries after Jesus lived. Jewish people, on the other hand, looked at it very differently. They saw this as a story of humanity, and a beautiful one at that, where you have, again, God creating out of love these beautiful people, Adam and Eve, and saying, hey, I want you to do well, go and flourish. Just don't eat off these two trees because they're going to kill you. And Adam and Eve, just like every human being in the world, gets tempted, gets a little self-centered, thinks they know a little bit better than the next person, and decide to take advantage of the fruit that they were supposed to not eat. And they were deeply disappointed. And instead of being on top of the world and just like God, they found themselves full of shame and guilt. Enter God. When God comes, God does not come with lightning bolts and an axe and a sword ready to chop these people up and start over, but he comes with grace. He comes with a motive of restoration and redemption, and in fact does just that. He's honest with them about the consequences, but he's still on their side. And he doesn't say that they're hopeless. He says it's going to be different. Consequences suck sometimes, and they sometimes have long-lasting effect, but you're still going to live, and I want you to live. And so he clothed them. He gave them clues about what life was going to be like as they went forward, but the whole tone of it was, you're going to live. You're going to go forward, so go forward. God was with them. It was a good start, not a terrible start. It was a very human experience that God redeemed. This is very good news. I think Jesus started to see everybody and everything through that lens. And it impacted everything he did with his life. It tied him in to this greater other that we call God, the Spirit of God, which was at the foundations of the world and still is, and somehow is connected to everything and everyone, and somehow impacts us and millions of people all over the world all the time. It gave him eyes to look at other people with a different lens, where he could see them as fellow human beings and fellow children of God. And he loved them. It didn't matter to him where they were from, what they looked like, what they were struggling with. He loved them. It also helped him call out power structures that were keeping some people down and keeping inequity and inequality going strong. And he recognized that that was not right, because we're all equal. We really, really are all equal, and we're all beloved by God. And that was his mindset that he brought, and so tied into the Spirit of God that was there from the beginning that amazing things happened in his life. He said at one point that he and God were one. And we've sometimes understood that to be this unique oneness, but then later on he has this prayer in the Gospel of John chapter 17 where his prayer is, God, I pray that my disciples will be one with you as you and I are one. Meaning that there is this connection, there is this unity, there's this together thing that is possible, that changes everything, that gives us the capacity to see differently, even when it's all hitting the fan, even when we're in a storm. We're in a storm right now. And some have wondered, well, we're all in the same boat, right? So that feels good. But crosswalker and outstanding person Terry Conwell posted an anonymous writing on Facebook just this past week. And as I was reading through this journal, I came across this quote from Ray Liotta. He had the last word in this article. And he was asked during the end of his interview about faith. What role should faith have in a person's life? And this is what Ray Liotta, the good fella, said. He said, I think religion is more a way of controlling and consoling people. Still, to this day, the thought of what is out there scares the heck out of me, except he didn't say heck. But that's only because I don't have a real belief. My mom died in my arms and my dad died in front of me, and that shook me. The older I get, the more I want to believe something is out there. So Ray's experience of God and of belief was in this one way of thinking about orthodoxy, which is you got to have the right beliefs. And that orientation toward orthodoxy does control, and in a weird way does console. But it wasn't the way of Jesus. The way of Jesus, as he understood orthodoxy, was believing in the right way, which is an awakened way. When Jesus talks about being born again, that's what he's talking about. And so when Terry posted this comment on her Facebook page, or this writing on her Facebook page, when I read that the author was anonymous, that's true, but that anonymous author is also awake. Listen to what this author said. I heard it said that we are all in the same boat, but it's not like that. We are in the same storm, but not in the same boat. Your ship could be shipwrecked, and mine might not be, or vice versa. For some, quarantine is optimal, a moment of reflection, of reconnection, easy and flip-flops with a cocktail or coffee. For others, this is a desperate financial and family crisis. In some homes, a sole occupant faces endless loneliness. In others, family members are getting peace, rest, and time with each other. While in still others, quarantine means an increased danger due to domestic violence. With the $600 weekly increase in unemployment, some are bringing in more money to their households than they were when they were working. Others are working more hours for less money due to pay cuts or loss in sales. Some families of four just received $3,400 from the stimulus, while other families of four saw $0. Some were concerned about getting a certain candy for Easter, while others were concerned if there would be enough bread, milk, and eggs for the weekend. Some want to go back to work because they don't qualify for unemployment and are running out of money. Others want to kill those who break the quarantine. Some are home spending 2 to 3 hours a day helping their child with online schooling, while others are spending 2 to 3 hours a day to educate their children on top of a 10 to 12-hour workday. Some have experienced the near death of the virus. Some have already lost someone from it. And some are not sure if their loved ones are going to make it. Others don't believe this is a big deal. Some have faith in God and expect miracles during this 2020. Others say the worst is yet to come. So, friends, we are not in the same boat. We are going through a time when our perceptions and needs are completely different. Each of us will emerge in our own way from this storm. It is very important to see beyond what is seen at first glance, not just looking, actually seeing. We are all on different ships during this storm, experiencing a very different journey. Just respect others when in public and be kind. Don't judge fellow humans because you're not in their story. We are all in different mental states than we were months ago, so remember, be kind. We may be in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. And when we are awake, we see that and we respect it. We respect it in other people's lives, and we respect it for our own lives. I don't know what you're going through specifically with COVID-19, but I know that you're probably human. And that means it's messing with you in some degree. And I know that it might feel like you are one of those disciples in the boat, and the only thing you can see is the storm around you. But the one we say we follow as Christians is at rest, is at calm. And the way he got there was his orientation toward life, the world, God, and everyone else that gave him calm all the way through his life, even until the last breath he took. The disciples were wondering, how do we tap into this? How do we have such a life with God? And they came back to, it must be his prayer life. So Jesus, teach us to pray. And so Jesus did. And many millions of people around the world for a very long time have been committing the Lord's Prayer to memory. And that's a good thing. I memorized it as a kid and can say it with 3 different forms of it, depending what church I'm in. But it really wasn't meant to be just a prayer we say out loud and we're done with it. It was meant to be a model for prayer, a prayer that we take our time with, meditate our way through. And that's how I want to leave with you now. As we reset our lives, as we try to get through COVID-19 and into whatever the next season's going to be, and it's not going to be an easy go for the world going forward, even when shelter in place lifts. We need to get in touch with this other capacity that is ours to have. That is good news that Jesus came to offer. That there is a different way, a way that helps us enter into the world with calm, that gives us eyes of compassion toward other people, that leads toward acts of compassion for other people as well. And I think it is shaped in and fostered by the Lord's Prayer. So we're going to take our time with it today. And as I say each line, I just want you to sit with it for 1 or 2 breaths and think about, what does this mean to you right now, today? So let's pray together and meditate on an extended Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May it be so. So thank you for being with us today. I hope you had a good experience. If you are on the Zoom version of this teaching, we're going to be starting our town hall meeting, which we're going to go over annual meeting agenda items in about 3 or 4 minutes. So give you time to stretch a little bit, grab a new cup of coffee, and we'll see you real soon. I hope you have a great week. If you need help, reach out to those who can help you through the mental health channels that are available to you. If you need food help, reach out to the food help that you have. If you need spiritual help, call me or the church, and we'll do whatever we can to help you in your time of need. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.